Hello everyone and happy fall! I am super excited for fall this year. Usually I don't want summer to end and I get sad that the warm weather activities are ending, but this year I've just been so excited and wearing my sweaters inside, of course, because it's still hot here in Texas. Just getting in the mood, and I feel like a big part of fall is just reading cozy books, and there's just like a certain vibe of books that you want to read in the fall. So today I wanted to give you guys some recommendations for what to read to get into the fall mood. I have a lot of books to talk about today. There are different sections. I'll try to put the timestamp thing so that you can skip to the just different sections of genres that you might want to read this fall. The first genre that I would like to give some recommendations for is dark academia. I just feel like that school setting is such a fall vibe because fall is like going back to school, and usually there's really fun settings that have kind of that fall aesthetic to them. So the first book I have is The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. This is about 6 characters who all have special skills. They're all wizards. They are trying to get into this elite secret society, but first they have to study for a year and learn different concepts about magic and use their skills in a different way. And they are competing to get into this society because only 5 of the 6 of them can get into it. So this one is an adult fantasy dark academia book. You need some more brain power to get through this one, I would say. Olivie Blake's writing is very good, but it does take a little bit more effort to get through. This one took me longer to read than my average speed. I have heard this book described as no plot, just vibes. And it's more like a character study. All 6 of the characters are very unique and super interesting to read about. They all have different motivations for being there and morals. None of the characters are very likable, but you do just get so intrigued and attached to them anyway. I definitely wish that I had read this book in the fall. I read it in the spring, but it definitely has those vibes. It's also an ongoing series. There is a second book that's currently out, but I believe there will be more. I've only read this first one so far, but I am planning on reading the second one, and I'm really interested to see how that goes. The second book or books that I want to recommend for dark academia is the Deadly Education series. I have the first 2 books here, but it is a completed trilogy. The second one was actually my favorite in the series, so if you read this one, I definitely recommend continuing because this one was so good. This book is about Galadriel, and she is a wizard, and all wizards in this world go off to the Scholomance, which is the wizarding school. This school is not very safe for the wizards because there are tons of monsters in the world who are trying to get to them and eat them because they have so much magical potential and power in them. So Galadriel is trying to survive school as well as finish all of her academics, but she's also hiding the fact that she is destined to become a dark witch. It's very interesting. She's fighting against her nature, but also just going through her schooling and trying to survive the monsters. The next 2 books are part of a series. I'm not sure if they're technically classified as dark academia, but I feel like it kind of falls under that category. This is the Legendborn cycle. There are currently 2 books out, but I do believe there will be more. This book is about Bree, and she goes to an early college program at UNC Chapel Hill. So that is the academia setting, and she becomes involved in this secret society who are all the descendants of the Knights of the Round Table. That is the part that I feel like is kind of dark academia, that like old society type of thing, as well as the fact that she's in college and it's set on the campus, and the house that they're in the secret society feels like that dark academia aesthetic. Bree is trying to figure out what happened to her mother because she doesn't believe that it was just a car accident like she's been told, and she becomes involved in this society that with magical powers and like a secret war against demons. I'm so excited to continue the series. I just love these characters. This one is YA. The other two, I believe, were both adult. Okay, the next category. One of my favorite things to do in the fall is to just get lost in a good long fantasy series. So I have a few recommendations for you guys. My first series recommendation, fantasy series, is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is a 7-book series, I believe. This is about Selena. She is a slave in a mine and she is being summoned to the prince's presence, and turns out he wants to ask her to be his chosen contestant to compete to be the king's assassin, because Selena is considered to be the assassin of this kingdom. That's how she was trained, and that's why she ended up in the mines as a slave. This one is such a good story to go through in the fall because there's so many books to it and just that fantasy feeling. The found family in this series is great. There's just so many characters to fall in love with in this series, and just books to give you some good fall content. The next series I have to recommend you guys is the Grishaverse series. There are 3 books in the Shadow and Bone series, then there's 2 books in the Six of Crows series, and there's 2 books in the King of Scars duology. All 3 of the plots that you get with this series, the fact that they're separated out, I think is a great way to help you binge the books. So in this world, there are Grisha, and these Grisha are kind of like wizards, except in their eyes, it is a science. So they call it the small science, and they just have the ability to manipulate different elements. In Shadow and Bone, there is this plague that's happening that has caused a rift in their kingdom. It's like this no man's land of shadows and monsters, and they're kind of trying to find a way to get rid of it, why it happened. The main character is a part of the military, but there's also this backdrop of like political issues and war. I recommend reading that one first and then going into the Six of Crows duology. This one's a little bit different because it's more focused on the 6 characters who are all hired to go carry out this heist that is related to this drug that is affecting Grisha negatively. It's allowing people to manipulate their abilities for their own gain. But once you get to King of Scars, I feel like it kind of brings both Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows together. This follows one of the characters from the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and it's really just the culmination of the 2 plot lines in the previous series. So I don't want to say too much in case it spoils something for you guys. But just the fact that you have 7 books to binge, and seriously the best, most lovable characters, and just some really good plots. It's a great series to immerse yourself in. So the last fantasy series I have to recommend for you guys is the Graceling series. I think there's 5 books out right now. I'm not sure if it's continuing on. I've read 3 of them and I've enjoyed them so much. The interesting thing about this series is, aside from I think the 4th and 5th book, their first 3 you can read really in any order. They follow different characters and they have their own plots that do connect to each other, but there's not any book that you need to read first. I think the most common way to read them is to read Graceling and then Fire, and then 3rd book called Bitter Blue, and then the books that come after that. But I read Fire first, and then Graceling, and then Bitter Blue. So really you can read them in any way you want to, and I think it helps you in case you do get tired of one like plot or one character or narrator. You can be in the same world, but you're following something different, and you can have some of that new perspective even though it's the same world, so you don't have to do that world building going into another book. But this series, most people are born with a grace, so it's a certain power. Most of them are unique. Very interesting to see all the different abilities that the characters have in this series, but there's also kind of a rift between 2 kingdoms, and the characters are trying to connect across that rift, and there's some political things that happen between the kingdoms. If you're looking for some royals, kings and queens and princesses sort of stories, then I would definitely recommend this series, because it really gave those good vibes of like in a castle and like there's corruption in the kingdoms and, you know, that sort of royalty drama with like the fantasy vibe. So I definitely recommend this for fall. I am planning on rereading this series soon so I can get to the newer books, because I don't remember enough to just hop right into them, but I think it will be perfect for fall. Okay, the next category is something that I feel like is what people think of most when they think of fall, and that is like the thrillers and mystery category. People kind of want that spookiness. So I have 3 of these recommendations are YA, because I don't love adult thriller, just because I'm a wimp. So if you're a wimp about thrillers or mystery, then these I would recommend to you. The first recommendation I have is the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy. I just recently finished this 3rd book, and I gave the first book 5 stars. So Pip is in high school and she's a senior. She is doing a capstone project for her senior year, and she decides that she's going to do it on a case that it's already been closed, but the way that it was solved she doesn't agree with. She doesn't think that's actually what happened, so she makes it her mission to find the truth and do reports on it, and that is what her project is about. I loved the way that Pip would go about her research. She's a very bold character, and just the way you are like finding out things with Pip. Just the investigator being the main character was a really fun aspect of this. This also has mixed media in it, so you see a lot of her like written reports and transcripts of interviews and things like that, which just makes the book fly by. It does get darker as the series progresses, so look up some trigger warnings if you're worried about that. I really recommend this series for the spooky season. If you like true crime, this is for you. The next series I have to recommend is The Inheritance Games, and this is more just of a mystery. It is about a girl who gets an inheritance from a stranger, and she is trying to figure out why. She realizes that this stranger has left a puzzle for her and his grandsons to solve. You're trying to figure out kind of why this puzzle is even left for them, but it is also helping her realize the reason she was chosen to inherit all of this money from him. This series is really great to keep you reading. It has really short chapters and also really great characters. There's quirky characters and funny banter between the characters as well. And there is a love triangle, so I feel like it gives you a lot of different aspects to like keep you interested in the story and continuing reading. But I loved the mystery aspect, and I also feel like the setting of this series within the Hawthorne mansion definitely has some fall aesthetic with it as well. Just that like high society, old money kind of aesthetic definitely gives me some fall vibes. The last thriller slash mystery recommendation I have for you guys is the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I've only read the first 2 books, but I definitely recommend this again if you like true crime, because this series is about these, I think there's 5 teenagers who all have these natural abilities that are very highly valued by the FBI. So they become part of this program where teenagers help them solve cases. And it was originally created with the idea that they would help with cold cases, but they end up involved in all of these cases that are happening currently. And it is very high stakes, very fast paced, and there's also a love triangle. Yeah, I definitely recommend these books if you're looking for more true crime-ish type of books. My last category, in case you don't want to read a series, because I think all of these have been series recommendations, are some standalones that I just feel like have some good fall aesthetics. The first one is one of my favorite books, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is about Addie. She is born in the 1600s and her family has arranged for her to be married, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to live her life, be independent, just go see the world, and she ends up praying to a god who answers after dark. And her prayer goes wrong, of course, and she becomes cursed for no one to remember her ever again. So she interacts with people all the time, but the second that they turn around or go through a door, they don't remember anything that happened. She kind of uses this to her advantage sometimes, but you're also following her along on her story, see how it impacts her life. And she was also cursed to live forever. So she has this really long life, and you can just see all the ways that this curse has had an effect on her. This book is set in present time, but it also has flashbacks. I feel like the historical aspects of this book definitely have some fall feeling to it for some reason, but also the fact that the present time is set in New York City, that just reminds me of fall so much. And I don't know, just this story itself, I just feel like getting all cozy with your book and lighting a candle, and I feel like this is the perfect book for that sort of situation. If you haven't read this, or if you're considering, just read it because it's so good. The next standalone recommendation I have for you guys is The Midnight Library by Haig. Disregard my bad looking tabs, but this is about Nora, who decides that she does not want to continue living her life. She is just in a really bad place, had a really bad day, and she ends up in this library where every book leads to a different version of her life. So every choice that she's made changes the course of her life, and she can choose which one of those she can go into. So it just goes through her story of experiencing her life had she made all these different decisions in her past. This one I really loved. It made you think about life a lot and what it means to regret, and also what it means to be grateful for the little things in your life. My very last recommendation for this video is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I need to reread it soon. It's about Puck. She lives on this island that's like the cliffs and like the raging sea sort of island, and I love the setting of this book. I feel like that's the part that gives the most fall vibes, but it's also set in October. Every October on this island, they have what's called the Scorpio Races, and they capture these horses that live in the sea, who they're not seahorses, they're like actual horses, but they're flesh eating. But they're like way faster than normal horses, and it's like this deadly race that they do every year in October. And Puck decides that she is going to race because she needs money to support her family with her own horse, her horse on land. So she's racing against these water horses with just a regular horse. And it's just such a good story. I loved the romance subplot in this book, and that sort of like stormy fall feeling is so good in this book. So I highly recommend. I'm really excited to reread it this fall. So that is all of my fall recommendations for you guys. I hope that this was a helpful video. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. Please let me know if you've read any of these. I love chatting about books and relating to people who love the same books as I do. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave me a like. And if you guys enjoy my content, please subscribe. I post every Wednesday, and I'm really excited to build my own community of people who love same books as me and who can give me book recommendations, because I'm always looking for those. So I hope that you guys have a really good day. Bye.